Welcome to the Impact Driven Leader Podcast. This is your host, Tyler Dickerhoof. Today, Election Tuesday, coming to you live on LinkedIn. We'll be posting this here a little bit later on YouTube. Alex, thank you for joining me.
Oh, yeah. We got a special show today. Special day, special show, special time.
Special time. It is 5 o'clock Eastern, 2 Pacific. We are spanning the country in this election day. It's if you're joining from outside the U.S., it is election day here in the United States, presidential election, and much less other elections. So today we decided to come to you live as part of the election coverage, but more importantly, talking a little bit about perspective. In about an hour, the first polls will be released at 6 p.m. Eastern. I know I have CNN on one screen. I have Fox News on the other screen, getting both perspectives here as we're talking, and I, have that playing in the background. Let me ask you this, Alex, as you are, a little earlier in the day, later in the day per se, as we share that. How has this election day gone for you? What has been the interaction that you've had with others? Has there been election talk? Blocking it all out? Like, share with me how the day's going.
No, day's going well. I think, I had my wife's birthday was on Friday. We all went to dinner. My brother-in-law, sister-in-law, cousins, aunt. And, it came time to that. Someone brought it up. And I think the family overall is like half and half, one side and the other. And my wife's aunt kept poking my brother-in-law, and she's about 5'5", 100 pounds, thin as a stick. He's like 6'5", 280. And I'm out running around with the kids. We're at a restaurant. They're going berserk. And I come back to the table and he's standing up going, "You can't talk this way to me. Like, you can't." I'm like, what the hell's going on?
Oh boy.
I know. And it was like this big fight because she kept telling he's liberal, she's Republican, and she kept telling him, and he's like, "I don't want to talk about it," but saying, "Who did you vote for? You voted wrong," and just laying into him. And he's like non-confrontational, but just blew up because she was just poking the bear. And that has been kind of my week. Today's been chill, normal day for me in terms of the election. Now it's kind of like heating up right now of just reading about all the things that are going on, but that's kind of been my day and the week leading up to this.
Let me ask you this. As you've been talking to clients, as you've been working with clients, you talk about the family situation, how have those that you interact with, what's been their perception on either how this is going to play out in their sphere, in their business, in their social circle? Like, give me some perspective there.
Yeah, I have a client in Toronto, and I would say they probably, we don't get political at all, but like I would say they lean left, and it's kind of like just throw it under the rug, like we don't discuss it, but like everyone's kind of in the camp of if Trump wins, it's going to be a shit show, and then I have a client in Florida who's definitely Republican. And, is literally like, if Kamala wins, I'm buying a house. I'm moving to Dubai and I'm getting a house in Dubai.
Okay.
It's two different sides. And I'm just here like shaking my head like, all right.
There's been some NFL players over the night that, have said, some former NFL players, if Kamala gets elected, I'm leaving the country. I remember last, election, we've had these elections. If so-and-so wins, I'm moving to Canada, which I think is funny because, I have many friends, business partners in Canada, and they would be happy to have our political scene from like, it's like people don't understand what they're asking for or stating. And I think that is kind of, I don't want to say comical, but yet it's also overzealous, meaning, really is it, come on, let's stop and think about it. And, there's been as much commentary from others like, hey, tomorrow's just another day. Just keep on rolling. And there's others that are saying the end of the world, the end of the free world as we know it happened today.
I know, it's crazy. It's just so polar, in one direction or the other. And it's a lot of driven by media and what people are saying on either networks that lean either way,
Yeah.
which is crazy, and that gets people, people all wound up. And another NFL. I mean, Patrick Mahomes' mom wearing a MAGA hat at the game. I don't know if Taylor Swift liked that very much, but I don't know those conversations that are happening over there, but
Yeah.
I'm sure I don't how much it's dividing people in households and families, because I've seen it
I
firsthand.
think that has been the ongoing commentary, is how much division it's causing. And one thing, and we talked about this, I think maybe last week, or we've talked about it independently. One of the polls that came out, and it said that 47% of Gen Z have lied or been dishonest when asked about their political choices or who they're voting for.
Mm.
And I think one of the pieces that I shared this morning on social media is, let's take for a moment and stop and pause and really say, how did we get there?
Yeah.
If the youngest voting and working generation is saying, I can't be honest with my thoughts, choices, and opinions, man, that's pretty dangerous. I think we've seen and
Yeah.
we've heard all the commentary and people about all the strife and division in workplaces, strife and division in relationships.
Right.
Years ago, you'll laugh about this one. There was a college football like commercial,
Uh-huh.
and it was a Ohio State fan and a Michigan fan, and they were dating, and they were driving down the road, and like, I think the person driving didn't know the other person was a fan of the other team, and they literally like threw them out of the car. Right. And that was the joke. And it's kind of funny, especially if you're from that part of the country, you get that's, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Rival
here's
heated.
what was funny about that is we've now gotten there politically, is
Oh
is
yeah.
really feeling like
More
I have
intense.
this opinion. You have, I was told this earlier. I have not confirmed it. I might need to source it, but I'm just going to share it for this commentary, is that in the state of Washington, the governor has already declared a state of emergency. So that way the National Guard is ready as this election goes.
Yeah, DC's already boarding up many stores.
I
People
know
are
the
like,
same has been in Portland. And here's the question I ask you. When we consider that or think about that, is that happening in Atlanta? Is that happening
yeah,
in, is that happening in Indianapolis? Is that happening in Dallas? Is that happening in Omaha? Where's that happening? And take for a moment, like, your consideration there. What does that mean?
yeah. I mean, I have a lot of windows open on my screen because there's a lot of different things, but I have not seen anything around Georgia or any Atlanta where people are boarding things up. Florida, it's predominantly in areas. I mean, DC, that are liberal. Um, you know, I don't know. I don't know if they're afraid of looting. Like, why? Like, if someone wins, why board up storefronts? Like, what do the stores have anything to do with the turnout of the election? Is people just going to go kind of what? Excuse me. What happened with COVID? It's like, what do any of these stores have to do with this mass hysteria around this sickness? And let's just go rob and steal everything. It doesn't make sense. And it's predominantly, it was heavily in California again, and in many of these states, and not typically in Republican states. I don't know why. Do you have any inclination or hypothesis of why that is?
To me, it's just an observation. And it's an observation, and I stop and think of where we're at and why we are where we are in the narrative. And again, I'm not putting a, one side is right or wrong here. Don't, if you're watching, you're listening, that isn't what I'm getting at. But I just got done reading a book. It's over here on the shelf. I'll refer to it at some point. Revenge of the Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell.
Mm,
I think you were with me when we heard Malcolm speak earlier this
yeah.
fall. And one thing that Malcolm talks about there is the misassociation of perspective. And, he talks about that in, tipping point and the things that push a tipping point. And I think it's very much about making observations. If the concern in areas, governors, city leaders that are concerned about looting and rioting and those factors, man, if you're having that concern on an election,
Right.
what does that tell of a greater, factor? To me, that points at, man, we have so much civil unrest and we've done a poor job of managing emotions, making sure that our community is safe, that we anticipate these things.
Yeah.
And it's one thing to be naive and not prepared. It's another to go to the full extent of, we know our environment and anticipate it. And I look at that and say, is that something as a society that we should be continuing to perpetuate? And it
Right.
seems like, again, you brought it up. I agree that a lot of these cities or the areas that are preparing for this are cities where they've had that civil unrest over the last 4, 5, 6 years with, going back to 2020 Antifa. I remember our downtown area, Spokane, was looted and there was rioting and, the Nike store got busted through. And what actually happened is there were Antifa members from other parts of the Western US that bust in to create the riots here.
Yeah.
For the civil unrest. We think about Minneapolis, right? Obviously the George Floyd situation. And all of that unrest and we're sitting here and we have so much anxiety and so much tension about this election. And you're like, how did we get here?
I know.
That's the question I beg to ask.
Well, Tyler, the thing is, if you were to ask a liberal, and my wife is liberal, she would say Trump stirred it all up. It's all Trump's fault. He stirred it all up. And that's kind of, that's the direction, they go into. Like that's the rhetoric, right? Because I personally am here and I listen to it and I'm like, I listen, I'm like, I don't know, like it seems all to be driven by the media you listen to and the content you consume. To me, I was listening to Trump speak last night. I listened to Kamala last, words and then Trump's last words. And Trump really spoke, and he has his New York humor and stuff like that. But his focus was a golden age for America, really like prosperity for Americans, getting grocery prices down, focusing on getting this country prosperous again. And Kamala's was really about equality and like peace and that sort of thing of like let's make it good for everybody, but not like where Trump is really focused on like economic and financial and like obviously the border is like his big concern, where Kamala is like, and that's kind of what a lot of people on the left hang their hats on, is like she just wants peace and equality and she's so good and kind, and Trump is so angry and like stirs the pot and causing divisiveness. And I go, I think he's using I don't know if he uses those exact words. His personality is his personality, but it's probably because people are fed up with the last 4 years and what has taken place in terms of let me look at the job numbers from last week. Abysmal. Like,
did you see the report what the final job numbers were during the Biden administration, but then also going back to the Obama administration?
I did not. What did they say?
So during the final job, and again, this is slanted. You have to accept it was slanted. The final jobs number report, so October of 2020, was 600,000 added jobs. All right, that was COVID. All right, take it for what it is. But when you go back to the final numbers of Obama's campaign, I think it was like well over 250,000 added jobs.
Yeah.
And, the excuse, the spin was, oh, we have this Boeing strike. Well, that shouldn't be an excuse. That's a part of the reason.
Right.
We have these strikes. Why do we have these strikes?
They're
Because
going
as
on.
you and I reviewed, the Boeing workers have asked for a 40% increase in wages.
Right.
That's coming because of how much their cost of living in this state where a lot of them are understanding, yes, that's how much our costs have gone up.
Yeah.
And, then also, well, because the hurricanes, people lost jobs. I'm like, well, but they lost job because of a hurricane. Like, I understand where they've been decimated in the Carolinas and they lost a lot of business, but like, you didn't add jobs in Florida because of the hurricanes. Actually, you would think that would be increased jobs. If you had a restoration business, you were adding jobs because you had so much work. If you had a remodeling, I have a friend that they live in Siesta Key and they had to move out because they had to do a full, lower floor remodel because of all the damage and destruction. They're like, that adds jobs. So again, that spin doesn't make sense to me. But here's the thing that's peculiar. And I asked you this, and I want to bring it up. And if you're watching live or if you're watching the recording and you want to share in the chat, I'd love to hear this from you. If we were to go back and say, if the quality of your life today, November 5th, 2024, and if you could remember back, what was it like November 5th, 2019? What were you doing? Where were you at? How was your quality of life? I can share with us. We were in London. We were in London for a John Maxwell event. We got to go to a soccer match between Man City and Liverpool. We got to spend 2 weeks away. And it was just, it was an exciting time because of like growth and prosperity and expectedness of like those things of like, I would say a vision of hope. And when you talk to people today, and Alex, I wonder, do people talk about hope today and like the ability of like, when you talk to your clients, how many of them are like, man, I'm so excited because things are moving and like, man, there's great opportunities. Is that what you gather from them?
No, I mean, no one says it like that. I would say most people, when it comes to the election or any of these candidates, are brace yourselves, get ready. This is going to be crazy. This is going to be interesting. Or, if Trump wins, it's going to be a shitstorm. If Kamala wins, we're leaving. There's no excitement, right, from anybody like of hope. I feel though the last, like, going back to just reviewing the last 4 years, everything is just so expensive. I mean, everything. And if it's like, okay, Kamala had her shot, she's VP, this is her party, she was just here, is it going to be the same thing? Am I just like everything's just going to be inflated, or do we try going back to President Trump and see what if he can bring us back to a prosperous golden age and bring down these prices?
I'm seeing each one of these screens is there's some exit polls, and right now the most important issue, the CNN exit poll was 35% democracy, 31% the economy, 14% abortion. When I look over here at the Fox News voter analysis, one of the polls that I showed that they were asking the most important issues were the cost of gas. And when you look at
Groceries,
those things, the expenses, those are what the polls are saying people are concerned about in their most important issues. Here's the question as we go back into that. We wake up tomorrow, November 6th, Wednesday. You own a business, you're leading a team. What do you say to people?
I mean, we have a great day. I mean, we got to be optimistic, no matter who wins the election. I mean, that can't affect, how we perform, how we lead, as business leaders, as thought leaders, as parents, we're going to let, this election results affect our day-to-day lives. I think that's where you listen. I mean, I have Fox Business on, but I go through CNBC, Fox Business, Fox, CNN, and the rhetoric on either side is, if Kamala wins, it's gonna be, the worst time in American history. I mean, we're never gonna come back for this. It's gonna be 100 years of just bullshit. It's gonna be horrible for your grandkids, your great grandkids. And then you turn on, MSNBC or CNN or ABC or any of those, and it's the same thing, but the opposite way. He's a dictator. He's going to be, there isn't going to be another election ever again. It's just going to be him. And I'm like, this is where it all stemming from. Like, these people talking like this, infiltrating so many minds that is, absolute. I can't work in absolutes. There's nothing that's absolute, right?
Yeah.
How can, that's how they're making it. Like, this is the way, this is absolutely going to happen to you. Your life and this country is going to go to shit. Absolutely. There's no other way. And I'm like, how do you think that way?
Well, but I think that's where so much of the political rhetoric sits. It's in order to sway votes and buy votes and gain votes and get votes, it is the directive of absolute. I am absolutely going to lower taxes. I am absolutely going to improve your quality of life. I am absolutely going to do X, Y, and Z. Part of the part of the three parts of judicial, having the House, the Senate, and the everything, all of it is like, man, it isn't absolute. It's democratic. It's also, where do so many politicians have difficulty is they make absolute declarations and then they get into the working environment of it and they realize that, oh, it doesn't work like that. I need to be a negotiator. How can I move forward a little bit? How can I hold on to, some of these tenets and values? And I think that's where what's interesting is it's often lost. And so much in leadership is understanding that too. I was told this, by some mentors. One of them very close to me is like, leadership is disappointing people at a rate that they can withstand. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that needs to be negative, but that's also understanding that a lot of times a leader's job is to look out for the best of you without giving you exactly what you want. It's kind of like your parents. Do your parents want the best for you? Yeah, they're probably not always going to give you Halloween candy, but there's some days, you know what, you can have a little bit of Halloween candy.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where, we get into this situation of what you bring up as leaders, as you're listening, you're watching, is what do we do to go forward? Have hope. Realize the world's not absolute, that we need to be focused on how do we serve our clients? What do we do well? How can we make sure that no matter what happens, we persevere and also find great windows of opportunity? Because one thing that I believe is absolute true, in every dark moment, there is a light. Yeah. And it's, are we willing to find it, or do we want to hide and cover our eyes?
The one thing that I wanted to talk about with you that I actually heard my wife and her friend discussing on the phone was tariffs, which I was shocked for them to be talking about. and they hate it. They think that these tariff ideas are horrible. And, so I was like digging around some more. And, if you look on, CNBC and some of these other places, tariffs could trigger dramatic price spikes in clothes, furniture, and other prices of goods between 60 and 100%. Tyler, where are we with this whole tariff idea that obviously Trump has been talking about throughout his run here up to this election day?
Here's my perspective on it. I actually had a discussion with my brother over the weekend. So my brother works for a large multi-international firm that sells fertilizer to farmers. And he talked about how a lot of his clients are concerned, farmers are concerned, because if these tariffs do come in, it's actually going to very negatively affect the price of corn, soybeans, some of those products, dairy products that we export a lot of. And one of the things he shared with me, and just as a perspective here, I'm going to focus on agriculture because that's an industry I know, is that we produce right now in the United States, we only consume 60% of the grains that we produce. So that means 40% of it are exported. Okay. So that means a large part of the farmer's price, we're going to say 40% of their price is determined by the export market. This is what I know to be true. Donald Trump knows that. Why does he know that? Because he was a president before that focused on international domestic trade, right? That was part of his original presidency. He did a lot to focus on how do we, make sure that we have healthy trade partners where we're not just getting taken advantage of. And he negotiated a lot of those things. So this is what I consider and think. I have a hard time believing that he's going to, if Trump gets elected in the tariffs, as we're talking about, that he's going to forsake all of the U.S. economy to accomplish a tariff to prove a point. I don't think he operates. I don't think he did that in business. I don't think, if we look back at Trump's history in business, he probably didn't very often drive to a place and overpay just to have a location. Right? That doesn't last in business, right? You may overpay on a piece of land in order to drive up all the other land so you can make money in it, but it's not. And so to think that we're going to lose everything by implementing tariffs, I think just the fear of a lot of countries in the potential tariffs will make them come to the table and say, hey, how can we be a better trade partner? To me, that's a win because it's again, all about negotiations. Go ahead.
No, that makes sense.
I can't hear you, Alex.
Can you not hear me? Check, 1, 2, 3.
There you go. Okay, now we're good.
Oh, sorry about that. No, I'm with you on that. I follow that. I think the rhetoric, if you look and search and, I've been listening all day, Fox Business, CNBC, two business channels have different varying opinions. And that has been a major talking point, amongst a lot of people over the last few weeks is if these tariffs come in, we're already underwater when it comes to grocery prices and all this. How are these tariffs going to, impact the prices of goods and things of that nature that are going to be imported? And like you said, I do think it's going to be a bargaining chip, that has not been utilized at all or correctly over the last 4 years, that could, increase or help optimize, this country's economic, outlook over the next few years. I agree with that.
I want to take this opportunity again. My background in agriculture, I don't think we've seen the steers walk by.
Yeah, where are those cows at?
They're out here somewhere. But let me give me a perspective. We shared this. If I stop, I've been raising steers for now 3-4 years. Okay. When I first bought them, the cost compared to when I bought the steers in the spring of this year was twice the cost that it was 3 years ago. Twice, 2 times. That's 100% inflation, cost of animals. Now, when people go to the grocery store and some of the conversations of, there's price gouging. Well, were the farmers gouging when they were selling the cattle? No. You know why they weren't? Is because the cost of those animals and to raise those animals had gone up twice. The amount of feed to pay for their mothers, the amount of taxes, the amount of all the things, the diesel fuel to grow the crops, to take care of the animals, to do all the farming is twice what it was. And so when all of those things add up, I think what's hard is farmers don't have the opportunity to set the price. They are price takers. They can set the price if I set the price when I go sell my animals, but if I can't sell them, I need to lower the price because I got to sell them. I can't just sit on it. The same as, when you go to a grocery store, what is the grocery store? They take and they have a margin where they need to operate. But if they're not selling it, you go to that back rack and it's 30% off. We have to move this or it spoils.
Yeah.
And what I learned and what I understand, who's the person that sets all the price? The person in the middle. And a lot of times that person in the middle, that's driven by their costs, their labor costs, their insurance costs, their, fuel costs, their, all of those costs add up, and they have a percentage of margin that they want to gain, and they have the ability to do that. And so when we look at the cost of living, we look at the cost of what's going on, I think too many people don't understand the flow of business to understand why prices end up where they end up. People don't spend enough time getting educated on true economics and how economics work to understand why are we at where we're at. Is it because all the grocery stores are price gouging? No, because to have all of them agree,
Right.
Walmart compared to Kroger, compared
Right.
to, Publix, compared
Public.
to all the other grocery stores, they're not all getting in a room and saying, hey, this is what we're going to charge
Right.
for chicken.
Right.
It doesn't work that way.
Right. Beef
Yeah.
price. Got a
It's how
ribeye.
did those prices get there? Well, the price that the distributor sets for them, the cost of goods. And it's like one of the things that happened several years ago is the cost of beef was really low and the cost was to raise them was really high. And so people got rid of their cows because they couldn't afford to feed them. Well, now we've gotten to the point where all of a sudden that's gone through economically. And when you continually add up all the costs over the years, that's where we're at. So I believe even if it is Kamala, the ability to drop grocery prices, sorry, it's going to take 2 to 3 years. It is.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say, what's your prediction? Let's, Trump wins. Do beef prices come down? How does beef, let's use beef because you raise cattle.
Yeah.
How does it start to decline? How does the price? I went to the grocery store. I love ribeye. I bought a ribeye, nothing big like this, $33.
Yeah. Yeah.
How does that?
I'll ship you some beef in January. my steers get slaughtered middle of January, so I'll ship you some around the 1st of February. So here's what would happen. There's 2 options for that price to come down. The way for that price to come down, which is healthy for everyone, is the cost of inputs go lower. Well, what's the number one input for all of agriculture? The number one input.
Like the feed?
Well, that, I would say what's connected to everything. The number one connected thing to everything is energy.
Okay.
The cost of diesel fuel, the cost of electric, the cost of propane, the cost of natural gas. That is the number one factor when you think about what attaches to everything that produces. So when I, want to farm, do things out here, I got to pay for diesel fuel to put in my tractor. When, I have electric in here that runs through the fence, like those are all implement costs. So if I want to, buy alfalfa hay in this time of year to feed them, well, what drives up the cost of alfalfa? Well, the energy that it costs to farm the alfalfa, the energy that it costs to water the alfalfa, well, that all comes from fuel. And so you lower those fuel costs, well, then I can say, hey, I can sell this feed for $300 a ton instead of $350 and still make enough profit and not lose money. That's a healthy way. An unhealthy way is if we were to actually import a bunch of lower cost products from other places and say you want to lower the cost of beef. Well, maybe all of a sudden we import, a very large amount of beef from Australia, Argentina, Brazil, wherever else. Say they can grow it. They don't have the environmental regulations. They import it at a lower cost. Well, then the entire cost of beef comes down because there's more supply. But you know what happens? I may survive because I have 3 steers, but the guy down the road who's got 100 steers, now all of a sudden he just lost so much money. He can't make his land payments. He can't make his business payments. He's out of business.
Yeah.
So we may have short-term lowered the price, but now all of a sudden we made ourselves more at risk because we have less producers
and more reliant on other countries because we got to import more.
So, here's a consideration on both. Say, for example, I don't know if this is the case. Don't know at all. But say part of the structure, say, for example, I know this is part of the, certain cost control measures is that there's going to be a restriction on the amount that grocery stores can cost. That was thrown out, right? I don't know if that's absolute, but we'll just go with it. And say, for example, a grocery store can only charge $30 for that ribeye, right? Say they can only charge $30.
Right.
In now all of a sudden, in order that they can only charge $30, they won't lose $3 a ribeye. They're going to go say, how can I find a lower cost ribeye? So they're either going to go to the distributor and say, hey, I need a lower cost ribeye. I can't sell the 33. I have to sell it at 30. So what does the distributor do? Well, if I can't buy it from Farmer Tyler because his input costs are so high that, he's no longer around or we can't buy it, I go buy it somewhere else. Mm-hmm. So if I go buy it in Argentina and it comes here without tariffs, what does it do? It replaces the domestic farmer to lower our cost, making us more vulnerable over time. But however, if I say, hey, if we lower our energy costs, we allow this stuff to work out domestically, and I make sure that we don't bring in lower cost products from somewhere else to, cut our prices here, it's not going to be a drop by 50% in food costs over time, but maybe in 4 or 5 years, we'll get back to more reasonable prices.
Well, you got Trump who says drill, baby, drill, and Kamala's like, no new drilling. And that if you're going to drill, you'll have more supply, which you could lower the cost. Is that kind of, the correlation?
Well,
there?
But I mean, I look at that as if we say, for example, we all of a sudden, I'm going to go back to beef. Say there was just all of a sudden we could make twice as many cows today, right? Oh, if there's twice as many cows and we have everywhere to house them and take care of them, we would drop our beef price overnight, right? And if we had twice as many cows, instead of having just 3 that I had 6 and I had all the land for them, and I could make a little bit less profit, but per animal, but more, man, that would be good business. Right. And that's where I think the drill, baby, drill, the oil, the energy is that allows for more business growth because we have to go put people to drill and transport all of that oil instead of buying it from the Middle East or buying it from other countries, buying it from Canada. Could it affect the Canadian energy? Well, maybe, but maybe we can buy lower cost energy from Canada than we aren't getting now because we have that pipeline available. Again, I'm not an energy specialist.
Yeah.
But when I look at those things and I start to wonder, here's what could be very dangerous. We try to make snap decisions to fix problems that aren't long-term sustainable. And that goes to the environment just as it does economics. And I think where we've gotten in trouble the last 4 years in living in a state that is mandated that we will be 100% electric vehicles in 11 years' time, that's a very scary mandate because it tells everyone who has an internal combustion engine and involved in that energy is like, your days are done, so you might as well get out of business.
Yeah.
And I think the difficulty there is we're not choosing a sustainable measure.
Yeah.
So,
polls are going to be closing in a bunch
minutes.
of states in about 20 minutes. What's closing? Let's see.
All the East Coast.
Yeah, all the
Eastern
East Coast
time zone.
Wow.
Which I think the Eastern time zone, if you look at, Michigan to the side of Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, those areas, I think that represents almost a third of the United States population. Yeah. Isn't that about, I think?
1/3. Yeah, 1/3.
Roughly.
Yeah, North Carolina 7:30, Arkansas 8:30, Michigan, Arizona, Wisconsin 9. And then the final battleground state, Nevada at 10. And then, California, Oregon, Washington, we kind of know that where that's going to go.
Well, those are mail-in. So,
yeah. And then, there was 2 interesting articles that I wanted to bring up. One, which is kind of fun. Guess how much money has been bet on this election? Do you know?
I have no idea.
Give me a guess. Give me a guess. How much?
$3 billion.
Close. Just about $4 billion.
$4 billion has been wagered
on this election in terms of Trump's winning in this, which I was just like, that's crazy. For perspective, the Super Bowl last year, which is like the biggest betting, was $16 billion. So it's not too far from that. I mean, billion.
It's a quarter of that, but it's.
Yeah.
I wonder if,
For a
again,
presidential
this
election.
is just a question. What is a normal given Sunday? A
Oh,
normal given football Sunday,
Oh.
not basketball, all baseball, all the big games, all the season. I'm talking about just a Sunday in October or a Sunday in September. I wonder how much is wagered.
It's okay. So there's an estimated 35 billion expected bet on the NFL per season.
Per season. Okay, so you divide that by 17, that's $2 billion a week. But does that take into consideration the Super Bowl as well?
I'm not seeing that.
Well, and say if that includes the Super Bowl and playoffs, then you're looking at probably just under $1 billion per week.
Yeah,
and I would say I would say football is one of the higher wagered sports.
Most bet, yeah. Oh, for sure, yeah. So it's triple. We could say probably with certainty it's more than triple a typical NFL Sunday.
Yeah. So I mean, to me, that's pretty amazing. It also, I mean, I think that's also an indication of where we've gotten to as a society that we gamble on so much, and it's so easy to do.
It's so funny, man. I remember.
Are you a gambler?
Yeah, I like gambling.
Okay.
Yeah.
So like on football games or like going to a casino?
A little bit on. I'd rather go to a casino, play a slot machine, you know, and hang. Like
just hit the slot, like just push the button,
chill.
Like
yeah,
just 3 lines, 5 lines, just like.
Well, they got all these new games now with dragons and shit.
Okay,
like,
okay.
That's
your gig.
I'd rather do that. Betting on a game, if I'm into it, like college basketball, March Madness, I like. Games are really fun. College football, the playoffs, I like because the games are typically fun. I'll do, $25-$50, nothing crazy.
Okay.
But I enjoy it. It's fun. I have not bet on the election though.
I think I have friends that probably did because I saw a friend of mine that said Trump minus 160 earlier today.
Oh, God.
And so I'm guessing that was the line.
That was the money line. Yeah.
Yeah. Which, I mean, okay, fine. It is what it is. And good for him. It's not something I enjoy. I just don't. As I've always joked, I bet gamble on animals instead, rather than.
How do you gamble on animals?
I'm
just
sitting
owning
with,
them.
I have owning out there, and it's a gamble. How much money can I make after the year? It's,
I don't know.
Invested in, dairy animals that are purebred and saying, hey, what will they ever turn out? Like, it's not a guaranteed profit at all. I mean, you could lose just as much as you can, lose gambling.
I don't know if you're going to, some sort of like animal fighting or you're.
No, nothing like that. I mean, that would be interesting to get to a
bet
point
on
where,
animals.
There's cow shows and there's wagering on it like there is horse racing. But okay, so that was the first article. $4 billion.
Yeah, $4 billion. Nuts. The second one, which I don't agree with, there was this is a Forbes article, Fortune magazine, that no matter what the turnout, many rich Americans will flee the country. And we go on to go, whoever it is, they're gonna
This is the speculation, or
no? This is speculation in their prediction in Fortune magazine that they're going. Rich Americans are going to leave the U.S. Which I feel like, Tyler, we highlighted this maybe a couple videos back. I don't think that's going to happen. I know people in Canada, wealthy people that left because they were getting taxed up the wazoo.
They left Canada.
They left Canada to go.
I know way more people that have left Canada and come to the U.S. or other countries than I know of anyone that left the U.S. and went to Canada. Yeah, I don't know anyone that went to Canada, and I can name you probably 7 people that were Canadians over the last 5 to 6 years that have all emigrated to the U.S. solely because of financial reasons.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't know anybody who's left the U.S. to go anywhere else And that's why I'm just
I
like
know some
reading
people
this.
that have gone to like Europe, but a lot of that was more of time of life and or just wanting to experience something different. You know,
Yeah.
maybe got a business opportunity to be able to work in Europe, but not to flee.
The American elections and what's going to
Yeah,
happen.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. And I, so I read that and I wanted to bring it up, and I'm like, who do you know that you can say have said I'm leaving the country and it literally has their ticket and the house picked out over in Europe or wherever to go leave? And I'm like, I don't know anybody. I haven't talked to anybody that's said that to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's very interesting. I think that's where having business partners that are in Canada, and that is why I know some of the people that have immigrated here and come for many different reasons. A lot of the rhetoric, I'm leaving the U.S., people haven't done their research to understand that even with a higher potential tax rate for, we'll say, wealthy individuals,
Mm-hmm.
they will still be far less than what it is in other countries. Now, it'll be far greater than some countries, but it will be far less than the countries that people are saying, hey, we want to go to.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I think there was just some reports in Norway. They did something to increase the tax, or somewhere in the Nordic country. I may be wrong in Norway, it might be Sweden, where they ended up losing like a significant portion of their top income earners because they actually fled to Denmark because of trying to put on so much tax.
There was a new poll just came out, NBC. Half of voters say they are financially worse off today than they were 4 years ago. Just came out, NBC News exit poll.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. As we wrap up, as we're getting to the time when the ballots close, we have 12 minutes left according to the what I have. This is funny. I have one that's 12:06, one of them that's 11:54. Maybe one of them's live, one of them's not, but that's what it is.
Or you're in the future or something.
I mean,
or in the
just
past.
who knows what they're doing. But here's the question for you, Alex.
Yeah.
As you go about the next several months in your conversations with people, will you reflect on this election, or will you just be on how do we move forward?
I'm more of like how we move forward. I mean, you're going to have your two sides and people's strong opinions about everything. At the end of the day, you vote. The turnout is the turnout. I think you're going to have a ton of people on both sides going, there was manipulation. I think we're going to have that part of this. But in a couple of months from now, I just move forward. I mean, focus on, whoever wins, wherever we go in whatever direction, where main focus is in the main focus, which is focus on, my work and my family and accomplish what I have to accomplish, no matter what. And that's kind of how I operate. I just can't reflect on an election where, I voted, I did my part, and the turnout's a turnout. I got things to do, people to see, and I want to enjoy my life.
I just wanted to pause you real quick. I see this on CNN. There's 182,000 pre-election ballots so far in Philadelphia County of Pennsylvania, and they expect 75 to 100,000 of those to be released at 8:01 Eastern. So roughly in
hour.
Well,
670, 2 hours.
Yeah.
2 hours.
So here's the thing, going back to what you said earlier, again, not to take focus away from that, what you were saying is just, hey, how do we move forward?
Yeah.
I think what we see in the next 3 months will be very similar to what we saw in the spring of 2020. The people that want to put their head in the sand and avoid life, it's going to be hard. Yeah. The people that look at it, great. Here are the rules of the game. Let's proceed forward. How do we make the most of it? What do we need to do? How do we, don't get drugged down in the doldrums, but saying, great, all right, this is the new game. How do we go play it? I think those two differences, the people that pivot and go compared to the people that bury and hide, whichever way you pick, man, that's how you're going to turn out.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's a mindset, right? I think for those watching and listening,
winning's a mindset.
Yeah. What is it?
Winning is a mindset.
It's a mind. I mean, yeah, because you know people, and I know people who get caught up in this stuff, whether they're family members or friends, and they like dwell on it for so long and complain about it. Whether they won or lost, it's like they just like go in this cycle, and I'm like, do you have anything else you want to focus on or talk about? Because
let's go back to your days at Baylor.
Yeah.
Hey, it's 3rd and 15, right? You're on defense, 3rd and 15 for the offense, and they get a first down. Do you sit and complain to the rest of your defensive backs about we should have had this coverage, that coverage? Or do you just play the next play?
Got to play the next play. Got to get it. Yeah. Got to read
That's
the
life. Play the next play. You can still win the game.
Yeah. I will say this. You can still be extremely profitable and prosperous no matter who wins. I really believe that. Like it happens all the time, every single year for the last 4,000 years. No matter who's ruling, you can find a way to better your life. There will be a way. Yeah.
Entirely. Well,
you gotta say that.
As we wrap up, thanks for having this conversation, Alex. We will see the results coming soon. Tomorrow, we'll be back with a post-election recap, go through some of these things. What information? Hey, do we have a declared winner? Do we not have a declared winner? What's that going to look like? And then just some of the commentary. What happens? Do we have riots? Do we have disruption in certain parts of the country, or is it not? So we will have that information tomorrow. Be back with you live on LinkedIn or recorded available on YouTube. So until next time, thanks for being here. Choose to lead with impact.